You walk into a local big box store, pick up a pair of sneakers or a kitchen appliance, and rarely stop to think about the thousands of miles it traveled to reach your hands. You assume the shelves stay full because of a predictable system of ships and trucks. But that system is breaking, and the cost of every single item you buy is being decided by a violent, high-stakes game of geography happening on the other side of the planet. There is a new $2.5 billion iron artery being carved through mountains and across seas, designed to bypass the traditional routes that have governed world trade for a century. Why is the world's most powerful economy suddenly focused on a single remote railway line in eastern Turkey? To understand why this matters to your wallet, we have to stop looking at the map the way you learned in school. The traditional routes for moving goods from Chinese factories to European living rooms are effectively dying. For decades, the logic was simple: load a container onto a ship, sail through the Suez Canal, and arrive in Europe weeks later. Alternatively, put it on a train that cuts through the massive landmass of Russia. It was cheap, it was established, and it was considered permanent. But permanence is a myth in global trade. When the war in Ukraine broke out, the Northern Rail corridor through Russia became a political nightmare. Western companies suddenly couldn't risk their reputations or legal status by using Russian tracks. Then the Red Sea became a gauntlet of drone strikes and naval blockades. Suddenly the Suez Canal, the literal throat of global commerce, became a bottleneck that could choke the world's supply chain in a matter of days. When that canal slows down, the price of the goods you buy in your local store doesn't just fluctuate, it spikes. When a ship takes 2 weeks longer to arrive or has to burn thousands of tons of extra fuel to sail around Africa, that cost is passed directly to the consumer. That is where the middle corridor enters the equation. It is a desperate, calculated backup plan. It is a path that cuts across the center of Eurasia, avoiding both the Russian north and the Suez south. At the heart of this strategy is a massive, multi-billion-dollar effort to connect China to Europe via Kazakhstan, the Caspian Sea, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and finally Turkey. Turkey is the linchpin. It is a nation that has spent billions to position itself as the sole bridge between East and West. While most countries were watching the chaos in the Red Sea and hoping for a return to the status quo, Turkey was busy laying down track. They recognized a fundamental shift. Global trade is no longer just about the cheapest route. It is about the most secure one. The crown jewel of this effort is the Kars-İğdir-Aralık-Diliku Railway. This $2.5 billion investment looks like a simple line on a map, but in reality, it is a geopolitical tool. It creates a secondary link to Azerbaijan, ensuring that even if one path is blocked, the flow of goods and the influence that comes with it never stops. China understands this better than anyone. They aren't just waiting for trade to happen, they are fueling a trend where mid-sized nations are forced to upgrade their infrastructure to satisfy China's hunger for European market access. It is a subtle but powerful form of power projection. China doesn't need to conquer these regions, it simply provides the demand that makes these projects profitable. The result is a chain of tracks and ports stretching from East Asian factories to the streets of Istanbul, designed to ensure that when one route burns, another is ready to take its place. Building this wasn't just about throwing money at construction crews, it was a massive technical headache. Regions developed their railways under different empires and ideologies. Azerbaijan and Georgia used the old Soviet gauge, meaning their tracks are wider than what you find in Turkey and the rest of Europe. If you simply connected the tracks, the trains would derail. To make this work, engineers built massive, specialized transfer hubs to lift cargo from one set of wheels to another. It adds time, cost, and complexity. Yet, for the powers involved, the cost of this complexity is far lower than the cost of a global trade shutdown. Every time a container is moved from a wide-gauge train to a standard-gauge train, it represents a conscious choice to bypass Russia and the Suez. It is the sound of a new economic order being built, one bolt at a time. The real question isn't whether these tracks can hold the weight of global trade, but who gets to control the speed at which it moves. We are seeing a race to dominate the transit time between the world's two largest economic blocs. If Turkey succeeds, it won't just be a bridge, it will be a gatekeeper. When engineers first approached the landscape, they weren't just dealing with dirt and rock, they were battling a century of political and geographic fragmentation. You have a region where borders were drawn by old empires and where rail standards were dictated by the Soviet legacy of the 1,520mm broad gauge. Turkey, however, operates on the international standard 1,435mm gauge. It's a mismatch that, for decades, effectively acted as a wall between Asia and Europe. The fix wasn't easy. Near Akalkalaki in Georgia, they built massive industrial-scale transfer facilities. Imagine cranes and robotic systems moving thousands of tons of cargo from one train to another just because the wheels don't fit the tracks on the other side of the border. It is inefficient, yes. It is expensive, certainly. But it is the bridge that turns a collection of isolated nations into a continuous, functioning transit corridor. This is not just about laying steel. It is about forcing two completely different transportation systems to talk to each other. As the years have passed, this has become a security obsession. Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey are not just building a railway, they are building a hedge against regional instability. Think about what happens when you control the rail. You don't just move goods, you move influence. By making themselves the indispensable transit point, these countries gain leverage. They stop being flyover states and start being the gatekeepers of the most vital trade link in the world. If you're a logistics company in the US, you might not be booking space on the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars line today, but your supply chain managers are watching it like a hawk. Every time there is a disruption in the Red Sea or a sanction that shuts down a Russian port, the premium on the middle corridor goes up. Rail capacity is expanding because the math of global trade is shifting. Investors are pouring billions into port modernization in Baku and new terminal operations in Kazakhstan because they know one thing for certain. The old just-in-time delivery model is dead, replaced by a just-in-case reality. The sheer ambition of the Kars Iktir Aralik Telugu project shows where this is heading. It's a 224-kilometer line, but its value is measured in the strategic security it offers. It creates redundancy. If the Georgia route faces a bottleneck, there is now an alternative link to Azerbaijan. This is the ultimate goal of the Middle Corridor: to create a system so resilient, so interconnected that no single geopolitical crisis can stop the flow of goods from China to Europe. But we have to talk about the hidden cost. Who pays for this? It's not just governments, it's the global market. As this route matures, we are seeing a massive shift in how trade is financed, with international institutions lining up to fund these projects because they view this rail link as an essential global utility. The strategic landscape of the Middle Corridor has shifted rapidly. As of June 2026, the Baku-Tbilisi-Kars railway has entered full capacity operations following a significant modernization of the Marabda-Kartsaki section. This upgrade, inaugurated in early June 2026, solidifies the route's status as a primary alternative to maritime shipping and the northern rail routes, now offering transit times of 13 to 14 days from China to the European border. While the BTK is currently functioning as a vital freight link, the broader regional architecture is evolving through the Zangezur Corridor project. Following a 2025 Washington summit, this initiative was rebranded as the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity, or TRIP. With US mediation, progress toward normalizing relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia has cleared the path for the physical construction of this second branch of the East-West Corridor, which is slated to begin development on Armenian soil this year. For the average consumer, these projects function as essential insurance for the global supply chain. By diversifying the physical routes, bypassing both the congested Suez Canal and politically volatile northern corridors. These rail links help stabilize the flow of manufactured goods. As these corridors become more efficient, they mitigate the risk of price spikes caused by maritime bottlenecks, directly influencing the reliability and cost of goods reaching international markets. You wanted to know how a remote railway could dictate the price of your sneakers. Now you see it. It is the cost of stability in an unstable world, and it is being built right under our feet. The expansion of these corridors isn't just about moving cargo faster, it is about the fundamental transformation of power in the 21st century. As China pushes its trade west and Europe struggles to decouple from volatile maritime choke points, the Middle Corridor is evolving into a geopolitical spine. Look at what is happening in the ports of Baku or the rail yards in Kazakhstan. You see digital customs systems, automated loading cranes, and a massive infusion of capital from global institutions that just 5 years ago wouldn't have touched these markets. They aren't funding these projects for the sake of development, they are funding them to secure their position in the new era of trade. When you see the complexity of these logistics, it forces you to rethink your own consumption. Every time you order a product online, you are participating in a massive, invisible global gamble. The companies that win this gamble are the ones that have diversified their transit routes. They are no longer relying on a single captain, a single canal, or a single rail line. The Middle Corridor is the ultimate manifestation of this transition. It is easy to get lost in the numbers, the billions of dollars, the thousands of kilometers of track, the millions of tons of freight, but the true impact is human. It is the factory worker in China whose goods actually reach the market. It is the business owner in Europe who doesn't have to raise prices because their inventory didn't get stuck in the Red Sea. It is the entire global economic machine recalibrating itself to survive the turbulence of a more fragmented world. As we look toward the end of the decade, the question is no longer whether this corridor will exist, but how much of the world's trade it will eventually carry. Every train that rolls through Kars, every container that is lifted in a Kalkalaki, and every ton of cargo that moves via trip is a signal. It's a signal that the age of easy, unobstructed maritime trade is behind us, and the age of iron, landlocked resilience has arrived. We are living in an era where infrastructure is diplomacy. By building these lines, these nations are essentially saying, we will not be left behind. They are forcing the world to acknowledge their importance. They are turning geography into a sustainable advantage. And for you, the viewer, this means that your access to the goods you depend on will be determined by the strength of these new connections. Think about the future of energy, the flow of critical minerals, and the movement of finished products. All of these require the kind of stability this rail network is providing. The Middle Corridor is not a cure-all, but it is the most significant structural change to global trade in a generation. It is the quiet, steel-reinforced backbone of a new global order, connecting the furthest reaches of Asia to the beating heart of Europe. The story of this $2.5 billion railway is far from over. It is only just beginning. As the final sections of TRIP come online, and as the existing BTK line continues to increase its throughput, we are going to see a fundamental shift in where the power of global commerce actually resides. It's shifting away from the coastlines and the narrow canals, and it is moving inland, deep into the heart of Eurasia. Consider the implications for national sovereignty. When a country hosts a major artery of global trade, it gains a seat at a table it previously couldn't reach. Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey are now at the center of a tug-of-war between competing visions of global connectivity. The involvement of major powers, from the United States and the European Union to China and its regional partners, shows that this isn't just about moving containers. It's about defining the rules of the game for the next 50 years. By building these railways, they are effectively locking themselves into a shared economic destiny. It's a risky gamble. If the region erupts, the infrastructure becomes a target. But if peace holds, the rewards are astronomical. We are watching the birth of a new economic continent, defined not by oceans, but by the relentless ironclad rhythm of trains moving across the steppes, the mountains, and the borderlands of a changing world. In this landscape, the winner isn't the nation with the largest navy, it's the nation that controls the most reliable rail gauge. It is the nation that can offer the fastest, safest, and most predictable path through the chaos. Turkey has positioned itself to win that prize, and the rest of the world is now scrambling to keep up. You are witnessing the re-engineering of the global supply chain, one track at a time, moving us toward a future where land connectivity is the ultimate currency. The next time you walk into a store, remember that the shelf space in front of you is a victory for engineers and diplomats working in the deep shadow of the Caucasus Mountains. Ultimately, this project highlights a deeper truth. Our global economy is no longer a monolith. It is becoming a network of competing, redundant paths, each struggling for survival against the weight of a chaotic, shifting geopolitical reality. We have entered the era of the high-stakes land bridge. Whether this railway brings lasting prosperity or becomes another casualty of regional tension remains the great, unanswered question of our time. But one thing is clear, the path from China to Europe will never be the same again. Every mile of track laid is a direct, hard-fought challenge to the dominance of the sea. Every shipment completed is a testament to the fact that, in a world of uncertainty, the iron path is the new gold standard for survival. This is Signal Frontier. I'll see you in the next one.